recoup some of the cost of keeping an eye on these properties, and it also, we verify that there's insurance on these properties as well. So it does, multiple things to increase the ability of the township to stay on top of these properties.
Thank you.
All right? Anyone else in that row? Next row?
I think there might be an error on page 4, section 4, the fee schedule. It's a little confusing.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. The state subsequent renewal is $750.
You changed it, you changed the language, yeah, you changed the numerals, but you didn't change the language on it.
We could.
Yeah, that, yeah.
Is it staying?
You can still move forward.
Is it staying $750 or is it going down?
No, see underneath this right now, we reduced the fees. I was gonna discuss that when we get it back. Anyone else in that row? Next row? Back row?
Tom Davis.
I'm sorry, your name again?
Question about the fee. Tom Davis.
And your address, sir? I'm sorry, your address for the record?
Address for the record.
258 Washington Street. About the fees, that's an annual thing, right? 150 the first time, the second time, and the third time is continued. Now, I own 2 properties, I've been having that for years. And perfectly behind those 2 properties, people wonder why I don't have anybody living in it. As far as that, I felt it was unnecessary as long as I keep the upkeep and pay the taxes. Okay. But now, since things starting to happen, just like I heard the mayor, somebody say that it seems like every day something's changing all the time. And people moving in, people moving out. And in the neighborhood, you have a lot of strange people moving in that's doing a lot of damage. I've been there since 1980 on Washington Street, right next to the Baptist Church. Never had any problem in that neighborhood until, like you said, every day there's a change. And I have called officers, which one's here right now. I try to maintain everything. What else? I had a little problem. Well, not a little problem with one of my houses because it rained. I didn't see it and it caved in. So what I'm planning on doing this year, after all the years the property sat there, because I bought those properties for each one of my daughters. Right? Just like you would do, you buy something and leave something behind for your daughter, your grandkids, something like that. But I want to find out from anybody here, because it's all new to me. This year, I made my mind way before it was put in the paper, and I didn't know anything about the last 2 sessions. But I want to be able to talk to somebody because this year I'm planning on fixing up everything like it should be. I got in touch with a contractor because I'm too old to do anything. I'm a great-grandfather. And what I'm doing now is, this is the year that I'm getting my work done. I just want to talk to someone so that I have that time and chance that it's going to be fixed up according to code. Like I said, I've been there since 1980. My mother lives on Chestnut Street, still alive, she's 94 years old. And everybody in the neighborhood knows the family. But for us, everybody here, I know what you're trying to do, and I applaud you for that. We're trying to get this old town back to where it was when it was prospering. And I'm willing, but I need help from somebody, I don't know who, to talk to.
If you want to reach out to me, what I will do is, I ain't mean to cut you off, is we'll sit down with you and the code enforcement guys, and they'll give you copies of what need, they'll come out and do a quick look around for you, and then, anybody that comes to us and wants to work with
I've
us
talked
will
to
be...
you before, so I won't hold up this meeting, so I have to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back row.
Holly Doyle, 33 White Street. I kind of don't understand how this ordinance is supposed to help things. There's a couple vacant properties that are on my street. I don't think the one has any responsible party because no one is ever there. Whenever there's an issue, we have to call the police, and that's the only way that they had a beehive attached to the side. And that's the only way anybody came out to pay attention to it. And then the other one, the responsible party came out and boarded up the first floor, but there's windows busted out on the third floor. And, I can see birds going in and out, and the squirrels are having a field day. And they keep coming out, but they're not doing anything. So charging them $150 to register, I thought landlords were already registered. And then the renewals, is this an annual renewal? Because, now we're gonna have to wait 2-3 years to take them to court for $300 that they haven't paid. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's serious enough to make a difference.
Well, what it
And
does is,
it's not like residents like this gentleman, but it's the ones who aren't anywhere around, you know?
That's the whole point to this.
This is the deal with the banks. They'll have to have a local agent. You'll have people, prime example, there's some houses on Rose Street that have been vacant for probably the better part of 18 years, and 2 attorneys in New York City own them. Well, this will require them, they'll have to have an agent local where we can go and serve paperwork and process on it. It gets us to update our files. Code enforcement will have to go through, do an inventory of these properties. And I know the house you're speaking of on White Street, code enforcement's
Oh, yeah, because I called you guys.
trying to get the irresponsible party there to take care of it. It just gives us another tool. 90% of the people that have a vacant home or business or property are responsible for it. We get people who just walk away. Prime example, I said at one meeting, a house on High Street, the windows were open, middle of winter. I sent guys in, they couldn't get in, they climbed through the window. The bank owns it now, and they left all the windows open. It's inside, it's all moldy now.
Right.
So they did that because they were mad the bank threw them out.
Right.
But we can avoid that by having this right up front, registered. We'll work with the banks and go from there.
I'll just address a couple things, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
This is not designed to hurt a good property owner who might have a building vacant, even for a couple of years. If you know the definitions, it has to have at least a couple of conditions. So if somebody just has a property vacant for a couple of years and they're keeping it in good condition, they're going there, they're cutting the grass, they're making sure the nails are polished, they're not subject to this at all, even if it's vacant for 3 years because they're keeping the property good. This is for the banks and the other things. It gives a tracking process and allows the township to get inside of it. And that's really the point of it, because the things you're talking about, we can hit them with code violations anyway, and get those type of liens.
Right, so these fees, then, this is an annual renewal?
That's just the registration fee, that's really,
An annual.
that's kind of meant to cover the inspection, I think, is part of the point. And it's also to make sure, again, I think the important part of this is to have an agent in New Jersey.
And things might have changed over a year, so you have something updated yearly. And there is in section 7 a whole list of violation and penalties which can be, assigned to the property if any of the
Anybody
requirements
that's
are in there.
noticed that reaches out to us and says, look, I can't get this paid until this time or I have a contract, and we extend the notice for them. When are you going to get it done by?
Oh, yeah.
And then,
it's
so
not
this way, because we understand you calling contractors, trying to get them to come out, only give you an estimate or something, can be a problem sometimes.
Well, like the one has been empty for 3 years, and somewhat empty before that. And I never see anybody.
Well, this
So those are
this
the
ordinance
ones.
gives us the tools to go at that, and like it's already been said, a local agent as a contact, insurance liability limits, that are substantial, with us named in it, so that if the policy is canceled, anything happens with it, the township is notified. The ability to get inside the ability for actually anybody to contact that property owner, because it's gonna be posted, it's posted right there. So, you'll actually know, who the contact is. Anyone, will know who that contact is. So, it increases the ability of the township to stay on top of these properties, but yet at the same time, it's soft enough on the folks like Mr. Davis, and others that have properties that are vacant, that are not problems, they're vacant, so again, it moves us forward towards mainly the bank-owned properties, I would say. I think that's what the real spirit of it was in the original, formulation of it, but, certainly, it's good for other properties as well.
I hope that this is a step in the right direction, because we're all working really hard to bring visitors into Mount Holly, and I hear some of their comments when they say, what's wrong
Yeah.
with that property? Why is that all boarded up? Things like that. So, for us to bring people into our town and then have them see that, that's not to our advantage.
So this definitely goes towards
It'd be
that.
helpful for all of us if we could get.
And this is more towards that, towards cleaning that up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions on the left or against the wall? No. Okay, seeing no further questions or discussion from the general public, I'll close it to the general public. Open it up for discussion amongst the council. Thank you. Dwayne?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. One is, the registration age, we're still showing 21, and I thought we were going to change that to any reasonable adult, because, as Mr. Davis is stating back here, he might fix this up for his daughter or leave her a house. If she's 18, she still is a responsible adult, so I thought we were
I
going to...
thought we did make that change.
It's still here.
It does say 21 still.
It says 21 still.
I would consider that a minor amendment as well. You can make that change really easy to get it fixed.
And then, I don't know what happened with the fees. They were $250, they went down to $150. They were $500, it went down to $300, and went down,
To be perfectly honest with you, $750 I thought was a little steep in this economy,
for the third year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's up to you
We're-
guys. If you want to amend it, that's entirely up to you. I just...
Well, I'm not sure. The newspaper, and Rose is here, said that we were cashing in on vacant properties, which I thought was misguided. I don't think that's what our intentions were, but we can't do it at this amount, that's for sure. So, we can't do both, and I do, Rose, hopefully you're paying attention, I did take offense to that. Obviously not, but we'll talk at the end of the meeting. And Mr. DeFalco echoing that, I do take offense to that. That wasn't the intention or the spirit of this ordinance. I didn't think the night we discussed it. I thought it was to, one, track who owned the house, whether it was a bank, and especially if it was a bank because of what we ran into on Cardinal Lane.
Did my comment not
having-
specifically talk about banks?
And that we did not have
strange
a
stuff.
vacant house that sat in the neighborhood for 2, 3, 4 years. Now, if a bank owns this house, then yes, we should cash in on it because they need to move it out of our neighborhood so that it's not vacant and it's not an eyesore to our community.
Right, but we also can't make two standards, one for the resident.
No. There are a list of things, and that list is quite long, of what that house has to meet before it becomes vacant. And that is one of which they walk away from and don't cut the grass. Now, if you own your house and it's vacant and you cut the grass, I owned a vacant, brand-new house in this town for 2 or 3 years. Nobody knew that it was vacant because we cut the grass, okay? The lights came on at night, the taxes were paid, and that house sat empty for my mother to live in for 3 years before somebody lived in it. That house was taken care of. And Mr. Davis is talking about doing the same thing with his house. I thought the spirit of this ordinance was to move the vacant homes that we had in our town that people were walking away from. We don't have that many that I know of. We don't have that many that I know of. But if we do, and the folks that are not $250, if you're sitting in New York somewhere and your mother left you a house in Mount Holly and you cashed in on it for a little while and then you can't rent it out because you didn't fix it up while you were making money as a renter, as a landlord, and now all of a sudden you want to leave it in our town and not fix it? $250 to me is nothing compared to what you made off of it before you left it. And if it's a bank that owns it now, I'd like them to move it. Turn it over to somebody that can afford it so they can move into it and it's no longer vacant. So the fees to me, to this, are a laugh. They're ridiculous. They're ridiculous.
So do you want to restore the original fees?
Yeah, I'd like the fees to be where they were, so the job is to not have a vacant house.
Well, let's see what the
Mr. Mayor,
rest of...
why don't we table this? We'll make all the corrections and the changes, and you can do it again.
Well, we can do this right now, right?
You can.
We're discussing it, and there's 5 members up here. I'm just speaking my
I'd like to get
mind.
this thing done.
Yeah,
so is there-
I'm just speaking my mind. There's 5 of us up here.
So Dwayne, one thing at a time. I don't know if you've got more stuff or not, but, what do you got?
But the point of this ordinance is not it's not about the money and things like that. If you have a property that has the problems you're talking about, there's going to be code violations anyway. The way I read it, the way this purpose is to identify the owners of the properties, get them a registered agent who's in the state, someone who could easily be brought to court on this, someone who's responsible, and to cover the inspection fees because it gives you the option to get them out there and inspect. If there's a problems, the public, the concerns of the public for the broken windows, things like that, there's separate code violations we have for that. That's what's in place. On the other hand, number one, if you go too high, you're going to have trouble collecting it, in which case then you're going to be calling these people into court on the per day violation when they're not registering. And that's why when the chief and I discussed this, we had made the lowering of the fees. Because again, this is the fees, not the fines. The other part, the cleaning it up, you're going to hit them with code violations anyway. This gets them in here to be registered. It's a whole...
So the lower cost for the registration is the
other-
intention to get their names listed without hesitation. Because if they are out of state doing code enforcement attachment to the house, you have to do R&D to find out who owns it now, where are they? But if the incentive is $100 or $300, they'll write that check to be listed as opposed to $750, for example. So we know who it is.
Well, that's by 3rd year. We already know who they are. That's by 3rd year. We already know who they are. The first year, if we want to keep it $150, so they race to the table, if that's what you're going to say they're going to do, race to the table, we don't have to hunt them down, and they register, we know who they are the first year. So the 2nd year, they haven't moved to do anything with it, then we raise it.
Well, how about we just discuss the cost?
Make a recommendation.
What do you got?
What I really recommend here then is that you table the entire thing, you schedule it for an executive session where the chief and I can meet, make a presentation along with the appropriate code officials who are going to be enforcing this, to let them give you some input potentially.
I think that's a bit much. How about, we just talk about this as some grown men here, and, we get this taken care of right here, 150, 300, 300. Dwayne, you want to restore it back to what it originally was?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
You guys want...
If we want to make it
You want to
150 the
adjust
first
this
year.
cost right here and now so we can get this done? You want to go back to leave it this way, or do you want to,
I think what we need to do is, for someone who was on here, I think an overall broad explanation of what the purpose of the ordinance is, which is one step in a better direction than we are today, where there is zero addressing this issue, and the idea of getting an accumulation, and like Dwayne said, we don't have an abundance of abandoned properties, but like Mayor Dow said, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, okay? So the idea is to have a reasonable fee where we're not going to make buckets loads of money on it, and get these people to register their information. So God forbid there's an issue, whether it's lawn, someone breaks a window, the roof is caving in, there's a maintenance, one of the many lists on the first couple pages here on what could be wrong with the property. We have someone that can attach their name to the property, assign the appropriate violations to it, and have code enforcement collect go on that side. Okay, this is more or less an ordinance to register who these people are, so we have a go-to point on where we can find and hunt them down to why they are causing a problem in their neighborhood with looking bad. Good example, there was a property in Ashurst Street, if everyone driven past their little bypass going through the end, that looked like it had about 5 feet worth of grass on it this summer, okay? Because the guy shipped stay and left it that way. The neighbors complained there was God knows what coming out of that. We didn't have this. We couldn't find the guy, okay? This makes them responsible, registers the fee, puts the appropriate fines on there, so if one day that house does sell, or we get a portion of it, we get some payment for having to maintain it, find the guy, and address the problem. And that's really what this is, nuts to bolts, period.
Well, again, we kicked it around with the public questioned it, and I think that's pretty clear what we want to do with the ordinance. Right now, we're just discussing the cost of this fee schedule, and
The reason why I say that, Rich, is because it seems like up here, there's some contention on the fees, but the realization is the fees aren't to generate income for the township. It's a motivation point to get these people to list, an avenue to get even some information, because right now there is none.
right, which is why I want to pass the thing right now, all right? But, at the same time, you have a council member who's, who's put out his opinion on it, and now we are, discussing this as a council on what we're going to do on his opinion. Now, if we want to do this as a negotiation, we have one council member that's, not happy with this amount here. We have the higher end. How about we split the difference and go 2, 4, and 5?
Well, registering it, if the chief thinks that, $150 is going to get these people to race in and register their house, it's not going to happen. We're still going to chase them
What
down.
I think, I'm a realist. I deal with these people.
I mean, would you prefer to do nothing, Dwayne?
No way.
I would prefer 250,
Dwayne,
500, and 750.
Dwayne,
That's what I would prefer.
I just want to move all right, so you're not getting,
Now,
we don't
wait a
have a
minute,
consensus on that,
let's make
right?
sure we understand this. When we discussed this ordinance, I discussed the things that made sense, the age, and to make sure that we had insurances on these buildings that would cover, because a lot of our houses are attached to another house. So to not have the insurance coverages where they are, and a vacant home burns down and destroys the house next door, and not have the proper coverages, and us know where that insurance company is, so that one, we can let them know the day after the fire when we have a displaced family who the insurance company is, and they can subrogate that day and be taken care of. That was the reasonable parts of these things that I had discussed when we discussed this ordinance. We also discussed the fees. Now, if the spirit of the ordinance is, and we believe that people are going to register if it's a reasonable amount of $150 the first year, and that's what everybody believes, I think the more important thing is that the house be covered with insurance, and we know who the people are that own the house. That's the two most important parts of this thing.
Well, then we'll move forward.
So, now, moving forward, if the fees do make somebody think the second time around, hey, I've had this vacant home, it shows up on somebody's report up in New York, that costs us $750 to sit there vacant. Maybe we ought to, $150 they're not even going to look at, $300 they're not going to look at. You get that number up a little bit higher to $1,000, somebody may look at it and say, let's start doing something with this house that we've sat vacant in Mount Holly for 3 years.
All right, Dwayne. Dwayne,
That's my
all
opinion.
right. I think you gave us the whole A to Z on that. All right, so there is no, do I see support for restoring it to the original amount, or do we go forward with the amount that we see here?
I would like to see a table myself so we could get this discussion together, and before, I think it would be the better thing to do, and discuss it in the next executive meeting.
I just have a little problem with, I did have a problem with the age, which we did
Which is a
discuss,
minor
which is a
amendment.
minor amendment. But I have a problem with the statement saying that he was offended by the fact that it was in the paper as being, we're looking to take money and make cash in, yet you want to raise the cost of the fees, which is us taking more money from these people.
These people, we're
These
talking...
banks,
Guys,
I know,
guys.
but I'm saying, you're saying you don't want us to cash in, but you want to raise the fees.
Yeah, we might as well, we might as well live up to the
sense.
All
headline.
right, let's have some more. Let's have some more.
Doesn't make sense.
Let's just.
I motion to table.
To table. A second to table? I second. A roll call to table.
Excuse me, before I take the roll call, point of clarification, because we've already heard and closed the public session, this does not need to be renoticed, correct?
If it could be, if there's major changes.
Okay.
Isn't there already a motion on the table to approve this ordinance?
Actually, there was already a motion and a second to approve
Let's
ordinance.
see.
You can make you can table it now if there's consensus to table it. You can take a vote to table it if that's the pleasure of the body.
What are we tabling?
We're tabling the whole ordinance.
No ordinance. So let a roll call happen. It's the will of the council. Go ahead, call the roll.
There's another reason why I recommend tabling it as well, which I think is just for the clarification on this thing. It's something that I realize, which my recommendation would also be, in order to save the township some money, if we tabled and you have some time to consider it, for the simple purpose of, the notice of this can be mailed with some tax bills. You might want to make it effective instead of April 1st, make it effective at that point in time. It could be more effective for you.
Well, wouldn't
Get the
we,
notification out with the tax bills.
well, wouldn't we be able to do that anyhow? I mean, we're sending the tax bills out if
Well, yes,
if
but-
we did it tonight or we did it, it's still gonna go out with the same tax bills. We could still put the notice out or not?
Yes, but it would be, are you going to enforce it? You're not going to enforce it back to April 1st. I noticed that was a tech graph there, so. Or that was when it was originally done, and when the chief and I discussed it.
Well, wouldn't it be a combination of both? This thing goes into effect tonight, or in 20 days from now, basically. After we pass something, isn't there a 20-day grace period before it becomes effective? Okay, so 20 days from now,
You're not going to be enforcing it anyway.
until 20 days from now. But now, if we move this forward, it'll be 20 days from that date.
Yeah, the problem is that it has an effective date of April 1st, 2013. They have 60 days. So you're already looking at mid-May. You're going to have to get the notices out. They're going to have 2 weeks to comply.
2 weeks to, okay. Why the 2 weeks to comply? They've got a notice,
Effective for 20 days.
right?
So you're looking at mid-May, roughly, and they have 60 days of April 1st. So that's another change that needs to be made to it, which wasn't something that we,
When we initially drafted this, we thought it was going to be an earlier meeting, that's why we put April
Yes.
1st. We went over this in my office, and obviously some of the changes didn't get, between Mr. Sapner and myself and Charlotte, didn't get to Charlotte,
quite frankly,
which is my fault, and I will, I'll make sure.
my fault too. I didn't realize that.
But regardless, and once a law is in effect, are you saying you have a list that you're gonna send out to right away? Wouldn't this be, you discover a properties, I mean, I'm sure you have some already that you know about, but this is a law that you enforce as you come across a house that's vacant. So I'm not understanding really where when you can enforce it stuff is coming out. Because once it's a law, after 20 days, you're driving around, house is vacant, you start the process to send them a notice. Isn't that the way this works?
Well, you should also send out with the tax bills to the...
But just in case the house is vacant, we're gonna send them out a notice, just in case they have a vacant house,
For the banks particularly, sure.
for the banks. And we normally do that, send them notices on...
We can, and we know who's bank owned, they can pull it up in the system.
So we, as a standard, send them notices on things when we send out the tax bills to the banks?
No.
What would be an example of what we would send them?
Excuse me.
What would be an example of what we would send out with the tax bill to the bank, besides this right here? I'm just curious, I've never...
It's on short notice that Mount Holly forced this, or passed this ordinance.
Right.
You should be aware of it. Please contact the township if you have any questions, and you can advise them as to that.
So if we change our code enforcement, do we send them a notice saying we've changed this about, this particular item with code
They
enforcement?
have a responsibility to know.
Sure,
But that's
that's what I'm
not,
saying.
I mean, the question is, what are you trying to accomplish with this ordinance?
To give the department the ability to do what we've been talking here about tonight.
But Mr. Belton seemed to think it was one part, whereas I suggested it was more the registration part. That's why I think it was suggested that be tabled for an executive session.
What I want is covered in this ordinance. And as far as I'm concerned, we can vote on this ordinance. What I want, okay? Now, as far as the fees go, if everybody thinks that we're being nice to banks, and we should be nice to banks, and we're gonna keep the fees low, let's move forward and vote on this ordinance so we can get it moved.
Because
I don't
The
want
whole thought process was not to be nice to banks, and not to be nice to anybody, it's to be fair.
Hold on. But part of the problem is here is just, to be clear about this, is if you want to have people register, then you want to have the fee reasonable. What's going to catch their attention and cause them to register is the fee, it's the penalty. The reason they're going to want to do it is the penalty is significant. It's a $500 per day penalty. So if they have a property and they discover it and they say that this is out here, they're going to pay the $150 to get registered. We're going to go in there, protect the public, which is the point of this, to make sure.
Right, the point of this is to protect the public.
Exactly.
So that's what I want to focus on here, that's why I want this thing now.
That's why it was
Okay.
recommended by Chief Martin and myself that the fee be lowered. Because if there's these code violations, things like that, they're going to get separate code violations regardless. This can allow you to bring them into court. The point of wanting them to register, you're going to get a lot more registrations.
And the sooner we put this in play, the better, though, because again, you said the point is to protect the public. So if this ordinance is to protect the public, every day that we delay passing this ordinance, we are not going that extra step to protect the public. So that is why I'd like to see this thing voted on right now, and not tabled.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
If everybody came in here and
I
we're
was
fine
happy
with the
with
fee
the
schedule,
Right.
I was
except
going by
for
what
me,
our
Okay.
solicitor
then
suggested,
vote
that
on the
it may
thing
want
and
to
let's
be
go
tabled.
for it.
Can we vote on tabling it, and then we can go back, all right? Is there?
We didn't vote on tabling.
No, we have to.
There were the first and the second.
There's a first and a second, so we need to do a roll call on that, and then if it's defeated, tabling is defeated, we can go forward with passing the thing with the next motion. Correct?
There was already a
At this
first and a
point in
second to
time,
approve.
it's my recommendation that it be tabled. There's no reason you can't have a conference on it. That's my recommendation.
Well, I mean,
What are we going to table it to do what?
Right.
To talk about it in executive
All right.
session and then move it forward.
So we're going to talk
Well,
about it to talk
no,
about
Dwayne,
fee schedule?
Dwayne.
Talk about next
All right, I'm
And cost us some more money
respectfully
and
declining
time.
that recommendation. Could I have the roll call on this, please?
What's the,
On
are we going with the
There's two
motion for
motions
tabling?
on the floor.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's two motions.
Right, to table it, let's get rid of that. If we can.
Okay, so on the table. Mr. Belton?
No.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
No.
Mr. Dow?
No. Okay, it's not tabled any longer. Now we move forward with the motion to pass it. Could I have a roll call on a pass or fail? With the amendments noted, or whatever
What are the amendments?
the amendment would be
only one I have is
the age,
The age.
the age,
That's it.
and that's it, right? That's all I heard, was the age.
The only thing that I would
No,
like,
there was more.
Oh, it was
Okay.
just the typographical on page.
And the
4,
typographical,
yeah, 750 is.
right, all right, so the typographical and the
So
age,
we're going to follow the numeral, not the written.
Correct.
right, correct.
So the
Which is also-
250,
Right.
the 500, and the 750 all go away, and we follow the 150,
At the
the
bottom of the
300,
page.
and the
Was there
300.
one other thing other than age you had pointed out, Mr.
yeah, it was I believe it was the residency of the location of the person responsible to be served upon. I didn't see it in here. So if they're living in New York, who is the responsible party to be served upon? Is that in here?
Section D, page 4.
No, but I thought after Mr. Belton said age, there was something else he said.
Just a fee
He
schedule.
went from, my notes are saying he went from age, minor amendment per George,
The other thing he said was insurance, which is already in there.
Yeah,
which was
which we
already...
covered last
Okay,
time.
all right. Could I have a roll call on this amendment, on this ordinance, please?
Mr. Belton?
No,
It's already in.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes. Okay, that's passed.
thank goodness we saved some money.
Are we gonna be adding that?
Okay.
Yes.
You might want to bring that up.
Mr. Mayor, prior to moving on.
Get something done, that's all. Move forward. Moving forward.
Mr. Ray?
Steve, yes?
Prior to moving on with the resolutions, we need to add Resolution 2013-84. It is a performance bond we received.
It's an acceptance of a
Performance bond.
performance bond for the Union Association of the Children's Home of Burlington County for their solar. I just learned of this evening.
It was dropped off my office
Yes.
today, and I fully reviewed it, and I sent a letter over to you. It's acceptable.
All right. Could you read it?
I don't have it. I haven't,
We don't have it here with us?
I have, if you'd like me to read the bond itself.
Well, no, I
Give it-
just need to
give
get
it-
cliff notes of
Yeah,
what
give
we're
us the-
saying yes
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Okay.
Just a resolution.
Mr. Safarano?
Accepting the performance bond from, I forget the name of the company.
Children's home? No?
From,
It's actually the name of it.
I'm sorry, why does this have to be done tonight?
Because we're going under some time deadlines, I believe. This is from Atlantic Underwriting, and it's for the children's home, their solar panel project.
They're posting an inspection escrow fee of $5,170. That check has been submitted with this bond today. Mr. Safarano reviewed the bond for language. It's in lieu of, the bond amount is $122,416.68.
Was it reviewed by our engineer?
Yes, that's.
Yes, the engineer.
his recommendations.
The engineer did submit a recommendation, which was attached to this bond, that as long as
Our engineer.
our engineer at Limo Group, Mr.
Okay.
Long.
Go along.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
has a letter of recommendation there?
Yes, sir. And as
Okay.
long as the 5% of the performance